Chapter 19 is about lipids. And so in this chapter, mostly what we're going to be doing is just looking at all the different types of lipids, a little bit of the reactions that they do, but lipids don't undergo a whole lot of reactions, so there's not a lot of that to learn. Let's start by defining what a lipid is. This is probably a word that you've heard before, but you might not know exactly what it means. First of all, it's a biological molecule. That means either that it is synthesized inside of a living system, like your body, or it's synthesized in a lab somewhere, but it has a biological purpose. So you can take it as a pharmaceutical and it will do something, cause your body to respond one way or another. And also lipids are non-polar molecules, which means that they are not soluble in water. And these are the two criteria for being classified as a lipid. You have to be biological and you have to be not soluble in water. And if you meet both of those criteria, then you are a lipid. One of the things that confuses a lot of people is that lipids do not have any particular functional group. So a lot of times people will ask me, what is the functional group of a lipid? Or what am I looking for when I'm trying to determine if a structure is a lipid or not? And there really isn't anything that you can see like a functional group. It's not exclusive to carboxylic acids. It's not exclusive to alkenes or alkynes. Any functional group could be in a lipid. It just has to meet these two criteria of being biological and nonpolar. Lipids are subdivided into two categories. So we're going to make like a tree diagram sort of a thing. Lipids can either be fatty acids or the other category is steroids and fat-soluble vitamins. And in our textbook, we're going to first talk about the fatty acid lipids, and then we'll talk about the steroids, which we've talked about a little bit already, and the fat-soluble vitamins. Fatty acids are just simply long-chain carboxylic acids. That's all that they are. So they are a type of carboxylic acid that just has a whole bunch of carbons on it. There isn't a cutoff for the long chain status, so there isn't a thing that says, oh, it has to have at least 12 carbons or 15 carbons or something like that. It's just a lot of carbons. So let's just draw like a whole lot of carbons. That is a lot of carbons, so that we would call that a fatty acid. We could also call it a carboxylic acid. It's both. It's a carboxylic acid and it's also a fatty acid. And maybe there's double bonds on this carbon chain, and maybe there isn't, and maybe there's substituents, and maybe there isn't. I'm going to take that off just because it takes up space. But there isn't any kind of criteria other than it has to have a lot of carbons, and then what it means to have a lot of carbons is also not defined. One of the characteristics of the fatty acid, the long-chain carboxylic acid, one of the ways that we describe it is that we say it is non-hydrolyzable. That's just a fancy way of saying it does not react with water. So you can mix it with water and literally nothing is going to happen at all. And this is also true for steroids and fat-soluble vitamins. They are not hydrolyzable. Again, that means that they do not react with water. Fatty acids inside of our bodies have a lot of purposes. We use them as building blocks to create a lot of different types of substances. So let's make this used to make, and let's continue our little tree diagram here. Fatty acids are used to make 3 different types of substances. One is a wax, The other is a triacyl glycerol. And the third type is a phospholipid. So just to make sure this is clear, a wax is not a type of a fatty acid. So we're kind of like changing the tree diagram concept here. Fatty acids are used to make, they're the building block of waxes, triacylglycerols, and phospholipids. So we need to have fatty acids in our body so that we can make wax and triacylglycerols and phospholipids. I forgot a H in my phospholipid. So let's talk a little bit about these three different lipids. Waxes, triacylglycerols, and phospholipids are all types of lipids. Waxes are esters with long carbon chains. So this would be a long chain ester. Remember that the ester functional group is a carbon-oxygen double bond with an oxygen right next to it. And then we have attached on either end carbon chains, which we often abbreviate with just the letter R. That just means it's a carbon chain. But if we wanted to draw some carbons on these chains, we could just draw a big old carbon chain coming off of this. I don't have a lot of room to fit that in there. So that's maybe what an ester would look like. And again, you could be putting double bonds on those carbon chains if you wanted or not. Just to save space, I'm going to get rid of those big old carbon chains and just use the letter R. So R is just indicating a carbon chain. Waxes do react with water, so they are hydrolyzable. It takes a little bit of effort, but you can use water to split a wax apart. And we actually learned this reaction when we were studying esters. The hydrolysis of an ester, we learned how to break an ester apart using a water molecule, and we can still do that even when the ester has long carbon chains and we call it a wax. The triacylglycerol, which is sometimes called, so we're going to give it an AKA, triacylglyceride. So those names sound almost exactly the same, and they mean the same thing. They're used interchangeably, so look out for that. Triacylglycerols are what we refer to every day as fats and oils. Fats and oils have the same molecular structure. They're just different in terms of the components that are used to make them. All fats and oils have what we call a backbone. So this is, I'm just representing by a rectangle here. We're gonna, when we get to the fats and oils section, we're gonna draw the structure of this guy out. But this backbone we call glycerol. It's a type of a molecule. And this glycerol backbone has got three things attached to it. They're gonna hang out to the side like this. And these three things are all fatty acids. I'm just going to abbreviate FA for the other two. So we're taking in these fatty acids in our diet, and one of the things that we can do with those fatty acids is use it to make fats and oils. So if you're looking at the structure of a triacylglycerol, it's going to have a shape to it that's got some stuff here, and then it's got really long carbon chains that are coming off the end like that. And there's going to be some oxygens in there somewhere along these lines. But this is sort of the general gist of what it will look like. And these guys also react with water, so these are also hydrolyzable. And we will look at that reaction of how they react with water and what they produce when they react with water. And then number 3 are phospholipids. Phospholipids are the components of cell membranes. So they are what we use to hold the contents of our cells on the inside of our cells. There are a couple different types of phospholipids. So when we get to the phospholipid section, then we're going to subdivide the phospholipids and learn more about the unique versions. The phospholipids structures are really similar to the structure of a triacylglycerol. They also have a glycerol backbone. Well, some of them, that's kind of a lie. Some of them have a different backbone than glycerol. And then they have 2 fatty acids hanging off of them, like this. And then in the position, the third position down here, there's a different group. And it is usually drawn on the other side of the molecule. So over here, which I didn't leave myself a lot of room to draw it. This group over here is a phosphate, which is a phosphorus with 4 oxygens on it, and it normally would have a charge. And then also there is an amino group, which is a nitrogen with some stuff on it. And then also there's an alcohol. So there's a lot of stuff hanging out on the end here, like that. You've got a problem on sapling that's giving you generic structures of waxes and triacylglycerols and phospholipids and different carboxylic acids and things like that, and it's asking you to classify them. The structure that they drew for the phospholipid has the glycerol, and it's got a couple fatty acids coming off of it, like you would expect. There's some oxygens in there. And then over for the phosphate amino alcohol group, it just has the phosphorus parts. It doesn't have the amino or the alcohol, so it's going to look something like this. And it's just an incomplete phospholipid, so be on the lookout for that. Phospholipids are also hydrolyzable. Where can we fit that? Right here. Hydrolyzable, again, meaning that they will react with water.